Hey everybody, it's Charles, Hype Central. Thanks for stopping by, checking up on us one more time. Thought it was time to get back to work, and I didn't want to delay another day. Although I was asked playfully why not wait a couple of days. But the more I wait, the more I adjust, the more I fidget. So I pray this is the correct time to come before you. So thanks for stopping by, and you all know how I do. Wonderful, my God is so wonderful. He's my shepherd, he's my guide. Whatever I need, the Lord will supply. My God is so wonderful, wonderful. My God is so wonderful. He's my shepherd, and he's my guide. Whatever I need, the Lord, he supplies. My God is so wonderful. And also the other song came to mind. I haven't sung in a while at a session. Life is more than this, so much more than that. Much, much more than this, so much more than that. Life is more than this, so much more than that. Life is so much, so much, so much more. Your life is more than this, so much more than that. Much, much more than this, so much more than that. Your life is more than this, so much more than that. Life is so much, so much, so much more. Our lives are more than this, so much more than that. Much, much more than this, so much more than that. Our lives are more than this, so much more than that. Life is so much, so much, so much more. For me, Sage. For me, Paula Santo. Lord, let the sounds be a sweet smelling savor. Moving on. Thanks for stopping by. I'm going to give you what I got. I told you in advance what the subject was going to be. I called it You. And you're going to find out momentarily what that U stands for. I have my reasons for not opening as much, but here we go. I've done something a little different that I've never done before in any of the sessions, and I actually wrote out a prologue, and I wrote it as I was hearing it. I wrote it as I was singing it. A couple of words I had to look over. Bear with me. These are my offerings, my perspective. I'm not proclaiming anything that I say on today as fact. Use your intuition, your discernment, and you'll know. It goes something like this. The puzzle pieces now gathering together to depict the chaotic portrait of the world's human condition, just as the designer and schemer would have it, the antagonist of our souls. Art, imitating life, or as in life that now imitates art. His art as he would have it. Next, there persists this constant challenge for the holistic views of the protagonist of change. I consider myself a protagonist of change. How about you? Moving on. To press forward without contradiction, while yet scattered about or abroad, pieces of the antagonist's work over continents, countries, nations, jurisdictions, and municipalities, like a jigsaw, are being culled together by deceptions, determination, and focus, at times driven by the shadow self, ours included. Our present reality portrays symptoms that manifest this surrealistic portrait of the world that the agents of the antagonist daily seeks. Even as the faintest sound of looming judgment and resolve approaches, methods, both of the spiritual kind, I put in parentheses, warfare, but as well as the psychological kind, again in parentheses, warfare. These are the vehicles to a despotic end. What do I mean by that? An end of dominance, of unfairness, and cruelty. Moving on. There are perpetrators of these actions among us who feel the need to flaunt their self-appointed geniuses. And more often, their activities are no longer hidden within societies. In saying that, I'm including secret societies, but generally societies. Or conspired while hotboxing. Don't ask me why that came to mind. It came to mind. I wrote it down. It's a real word. Look it up. Neither now the perceived collusions of institutions or governments who whitewash. Moving on. Most provocations to this diabolical view of life around the world by the antagonists are now taking place boldly and in plain sight, which adds to its blatancy, obvious and offensive. And unfortunately, we en masse are so heavily vested within or under the vicissitudes of life spoken of in the book of Ecclesiastes that any threat to overall peace, stability, or even growth, along with its advancements, hinder our awareness to the antagonist or to his agents' activities and or motivations. And then I wrote these words, quote unquote, just as they would have it. But yes, to our protagonists of change, to our detriment. For this reason, the awakening to our intuition and discernment have become paramount. We must ask, for me, by prayer or meditation, for and pursue with utmost diligence the guidance necessary and the guidance necessary to counteract successfully the antics, the stratagems, the methodical tactics of those intent on absolute domination and or submission of the targeted, the world's inhabitants. Ashe. And then I have the words, let's begin. Let's begin. A whole lot of words. I don't normally do it that way, but as I saw the words, I wrote them down, and I said I'm going to convey it. Not words that I normally use, the words I weren't familiar with, I looked up. But I didn't go scouting around for words. I'm giving you what came to me, and as always, I'm just sharing. Use what you can use, otherwise douse the rest. Now, I presented a video, and the video was based on a dream that I had. And to the best of my ability in previewing different videos, this came the closest to what I saw. And I named this subject You for a reason, but You is short for unique. And I'll try to convey it as I go along, but not changing the subject, but You represents the word unique. I also have down on the side entity. I have off on the side existence or non-existence, reality or non-reality. But for now, unique is what I saw. Dreamscape, adventures of sort. I start off by saying this, unique. A unique set of skills which begat access. Something just popped in my head. I'm going to convey it. Listen, there are many individuals around the world that have giftings. And I'll say it this way. Those with giftings aren't necessarily following after light things. I'll be nice. I'll be nice. Some are neutral, but some use their uniqueness for other reasons. I'll say it that way. And another thing I want to mention is you aren't the only one with gifts. Another thing is this. Whatever level you're on in giftings, be aware. I hear sometimes people say something about you can't compete where you don't compare, or something along those lines. But the thing about superheroes, and I'm using it, as an example, is every now and then they have to face their match. So did I lose anybody, or are y'all with me at this point? So this entity, whether of existence or non-existence, whether of reality or non-reality, but unique and skilled. Moving on. Unique. Size, unique makeup, unique origin. But I emphasized the word origin, and I wrote the word unknown. Shapeshifter, for real. Moving on. Now being introduced, I'm going into the dreamscape, and I'll explain it to the best of I want to convey it as best as I saw it. So bear with me. If you have to take a break, come back. I'm going to convey it to the best of my ability, what I saw. Here we go. Now being introduced and interviewed as one thing, but then suddenly, during a sort of irreverent demonstration, and that's the way I wrote it, not demonstration, I wrote demon-stration. During a sort of irreverent demonstration, an instant change, one of blasphemy in nature, one of sacrilege in nature, toward God, etc. Even as the interviewer was taken aback. During this, I stood as an observer. I'm going to give you the layout of the dream momentarily. Bear with me. I stood as an observer of the events, sort of bystanding. But certain thoughts came to mind as I was viewing this. I'll tell you this much. What was I viewing? That video represents, and again, maybe if I had to wait until Sunday, the video would be up, but me, sorry, pray for me. The video that was presented shows a man, and he's doing his 7 points. He's praying. It doesn't say in the video what his background is and all of that, but a number of us, I believe, have probably seen this before. I remember there was a video that I talked about the job that was God given to me. I lost the window treatment job. I was awakened on that Saturday morning. And the Spirit of God, I'm just going to be myself. The Spirit of God came to me on that Saturday morning and told me how to dress. First, to go look for a job. And I said, who looks for a job? I'm being myself, y'all. Who looks for a job on a Saturday morning? But it was just me and God on my bed. So after I was given what to wear, tie, shirt, and all of that, I went to the job that he told me to go to. And if I don't want to go into all the details of the video, but basically, the job I was told to go to was Radio Shack. The store I was given as a manager trainee was in Roseland of Chicago, back in Chicago. And the manager of the store, again, I was manager trainee, happened to be Muslim. And there were, at least on my shift, at least 2 times a day he would step away and go into his office, and he would pretty much do what you're seeing there. And he spent a lot of time at White Castle because I guess they were beef burgers, I guess, or something along those lines. So he would eat a lot of those. But anyway, so I've seen it before, and I feel like what you saw in that video, or what you're seeing on the video, is something that's not unfamiliar. You've seen it. So as an observer, this is what I was watching. This figure, this entity, going through this process that you have a video of. Moving on. Let me pick up where I left off. So, as a bystander, certain thoughts came to mind as I was watching this. Those thoughts took me to someone potentially released from prison, while there having time, much time, to self-reflect and more. I've got here becoming nefarious, becoming Machiavellian in nature. Now I'm going to pause there. These were the thoughts I had in the dream. At this point, I was in the dream as an observer, watching the happenings. All right, let me move a little bit further. The interviewer, now gazing at this unique figure of a man, prostrated, musing over the words he heard. And this was the point of blasphemy, because the word I actually heard was blasphemy. But within the dream, I did not or do not recall exactly what the verbiage were. But the shout within was blasphemy. And when this figure, while he was going up and down, during this period of down, he was in the down post and he said some words. And that word came to mind. A form of sacrilege of some sort. And when he said that, the interviewer that was there, it's going to make sense in a few minutes, hang on. The interviewer was also there. When he said those words, he looked at him. Now, let me see if I can position, for the sake of you watching me. On the video, as an observer looking at the video, the prayer, we'll call him, is to our left because we're looking at it that way. But in my dream, that prayer that was going up and down, doing my word, his 7 points, was on my right hand. And the interviewer was on the left of him, pretty much doing the same thing he was doing. And I'm going to explain that in a few moments. But when the prayer said those words of sacrilege or blasphemy, the interviewer was taken back and he looked over at him. This is me observing the dream. But at the same time he did that, I also felt a shudder on the inside. I'm going to talk to you more about that momentarily. So, the interviewer now gazing at this unique figure of a man, prostrated, musing over the words he just heard. The interviewer was also prostrate at the time, like a show of public solidarity. And I put ... cause unknown. Let me move on. Next, this person is acknowledging me. So, in the dream, I would say to you that I was just an observer. I wasn't supposed to be a part of the dream, I thought. This is just me saying the words out loud. But on a sudden, now this prayer acknowledges me. And it says, he extended his hand as though to convey respect and peace. But this gesture suddenly turned, as I am now turning to my next page. It turned into a jujitsu type maneuver where I am being hoisted, grabbed up with one fluid motion and lifted up in the air. A sort of submission takedown. At which point, I immediately went into the acknowledgement of whom I have to do. Asterisk, more on this later. Hang tight. We're going to get there. We're going to get there. I hope I still got y'all. I hope I still got y'all. But in amazement, though, I had noted already, while the figure was prostrate, with the interviewer actively following suit, this didn't look good. And sure enough, my intuition proved correct. And then I wrote italicized, everything is in handwriting, but here I printed intuitive nudges even within dreamscape. And then I've got exclamation point, question mark. O Lord, our God, Ashe. Now, let me go a little bit further. Me. Let's go back. As the observer, the event in front of me was a sort of pop and circumstance. Here's where I'm about to break down what I was feeling during the dream, what I was seeing during the dream, and I hope I can convey it as I see it and saw it. The event in front of me was some sort of pop and circumstance. And the reason why I used that, while in high school, for 3 years I was in band, played trombone and concert band, marching band on the street, me dancing, oh God. But anyway, we played pop and circumstance for a few graduations that had used our school. So that's why that song came to mind. And to me, it represents a sort of acknowledgement and celebration. So that's what came to me as I was writing all this down. So the event in front of me was a sort of pop and circumstance in nature, a sort of celebration of this person's release. Public in nature, the reason for the presence of the interviewer. Now, let me see, should I read the next before I say what I'm going to say? Yes, I'll read the next one. To note, I could see myself within this dream feeling the depth of compassion. Now, how can I convey this? Because it's a dream. Yes, a wave of compassion came over me as I was looking at this man. Of course, it was before, I think, the point of the sacrilege or blasphemy. The interviewer's on the other side, on the left-hand side, The prayer was on the right-hand side. Going forward, I'm going to try to remember to call him an entity. The entity was on the right-hand side. But as I stood at this entity as an observer, I felt the waves of compassion, like in my belly. If that's correct, I don't know, because I'm not going to pretend like I know what chakra is all about. But right in my belly, I could feel the waves of compassion as I looked at this man. So let me go a little bit further. So I assumed the person had gained liberty, at least based on mitigating circumstances or something else. Let me read a little bit more. This is why the event, I'm now calling it, was so public. And I felt that the world were the spectators full of intrigue and interest to this event. Society at large, if you will. I'm about to turn to the next page. So let me see if I can convey it again in case I lost someone. So the event that was taking place somewhere in the concaves of that dream, to me, felt like possibly, because we're going to get to some of the answers later, that the man was released from prison. Maybe he was in there on false pretenses or whatever, this entity, whatever, on lockdown for whatever. And now he was experiencing a form of compassion. For whatever reason, he's now released. The reason the interviewer was prostrate with him, he was showing, it was a guy, he was showing solidarity to the event. Since this figure of a man was doing the prayers, the interviewer decided to participate with him. Is everybody with me? So they're doing it together. They're bowing down. And at the point when this figure of a man, the entity, said whatever he said, and it struck me, blasphemy or sacrilege, the interviewer quickly turned his head. Our timing was consistent at the same time. I shuddered on the inside, and the interviewer looked at the figure, looked right. Where did I turn the page at? Let me see. Society at large, if you will, now during this demonstration, I wrote again, of prayer, and the word of blasphemy, I wrote down up top, it was an expletive in nature. That much I kind of recall and remember. That the interviewer took pause. I, as the observer, shuddered. It was an inside shudder. But noted within, this figure had time to gather thoughts as well as potential actions. After the entity did what it did, and the interviewer looked in shock at what had just been said coming from this figure, on the inside I was still, I guess reading is a strong word, but I was still reading this figure. And the thoughts coming to my mind that, okay, it's a celebration. Okay, he did what he just did. But on the inside, I'm thinking, no. I'll say to you that wherever he was, he had time. He had time to gather thoughts. He had time to create potential actions. For example, time to plot, time to plan, time to scheme. I concluded it was a lot of time. And then I wrote the words, lots and lots of time. Let's go back. This was probably the reason so much attention was on the event. It felt like the world was watching during this period of time. The interviewer, in solidarity to whatever this entity supposedly went through, was bowing along with this entity. But at the point of the entity doing what it did, the interviewer was now taken back. And me as the observer shuddered on the inside to what had taken place. But for me, it confirmed everything that I was reading as I was watching the figure in action. Hope I didn't lose anybody. Moving on. At this point, I am reminded between the prostration of prayer and blasphemy, the words came to mind, dun, dun, dun. You know when you're watching a movie in real life and there's certain scenes, you know there's a dun, dun, dun. You know a turn. So this is what all the things I was feeling on the inside even during the dream. At this point, I am reminded between the prostration of praying and blasphemy and the extension of his hand to me, a motion was made. Now let me see if I can convey this without losing you guys. By him with his arms extended, down almost ape-like in length, but rubbery at the elbows. Now let me stop because I probably lost some of y'all already. So, interviewer, solidarity with the prayer blaspheme or either sacrilege. All the while, it seemed like I was intuitively reading what this figure was all about, at least potentially. And up until this point, everything was being confirmed based on what I was seeing. So after this figure had lifted me up, he raised his hand, he put his hand out of respect to shake my hand, out of respect and acknowledgement or whatever the words were I used just a moments ago. But instead, it turned into a jiu-jitsu type move. He grabbed my hand. It was like a thrust to him, lifted me up at the same time, and now I'm up at the air. I'm going to come back to that because I'm going to come back to that. Hang on. Now, at this point, after that, the interviewer is now off of the scene in the dreamscape. But the entity, is now on my left hand, and I'm looking at him. This entity is now, he has his arms down to his side. I'm going to try to keep the microphone where it is. He has both arms down to his side. A good example of the picture I'm seeing of that entity is a basketball player at the goal line about to take a shot. Before he takes the shot, he might bounce the ball a couple of times, but he shakes his arms like to get his arms a little conditioning. And this is what this entity was doing. He was flaying his arms side to side. And as I looked at his arms, they were unusually long. It was like looking at a gorilla. A gorilla, a very muscular, stout, arms very long because they do a lot with their arms, with their swinging and the grabbing and all that. This figure's arms took on that look. And right at the elbows, they were kind of rubbery to emphasize that. And just like my shirt is crinkling up at the joint of my elbow, my inner elbow, his arms seem to have those same wrinkles there. Let me read a little bit on, a little bit more, so you can be right where I am. By him with his arms extending down almost ape-like in length and rubbery at the elbows, like he had been compressed or folded for a long period of time. This entity. Shirt wrinkled at the sleeves. And then I wrote like a basketball player shaking his arms, flaying. This figure was flaying arms as to straighten them out. But also, while he was doing this, y'all, I was allowed, it was almost like, I'm looking at this camera now, it was almost like the camera zoomed in on the entity's face. Let me describe what I saw. It says, also a self-admiration was beginning to take place on this figure's face. Egotistical in nature. A sense of accomplishment. This is everything that I read on his face. it was like he just took on something altogether different. I hope you're still with me. Moving on. The thought came to mind within the dream, you all, because this was before. After the dream is when I started doing a little research and checking things out based on what I saw in the dream. Within the dream, the thought came to mind, jinn, J-I-N-N, or genie, if you'll allow me to go there. Out of a bottle is what I wrote down. You, written in standard penmanship, description, man, question mark I put down. I wrote these words next. His appearance was like a Russian, bear with me in the folly. It's a dream that I'm conveying to you, and I'm sharing with you as I saw it and as I heard it. I heard the word Russian cosmonaut. What's a cosmonaut? Usually when I'm watching those type movies, a cosmonaut represents an astronaut. When I looked up the word cosmonaut, basically that's what it is. But that's the appearance he gave. With a name like Ivan or Ivan, I wrote down. Even his build and look conveyed that. And the hair. Sidebar, you all. Now, usually on these movies, I'm looking at the camera a certain way, make sure the light is red. This is probably another reason why I was recommended to wait on Sunday, but pray for me, y'all. So, usually when they use, because there's certain movies, but most of the movies I've seen with a Russian in it as an astronaut, they usually make, for whatever reason, because I don't know who's going to hear it. I'm talking about the movies I've seen. I didn't make the movies. They usually make them like they're duh, or kind of clumsy. But when you think about it, there has to be something there, otherwise they wouldn't be there in space doing the job that they're doing. But in most movies I've seen, they present them a little clumsily, and they exaggerate their ability to speak English. Some of y'all know exactly what I'm talking about, but this is what I'm seeing and what I was seeing as I'm trying to diagnose the things I saw and the things I heard. Moving on. And then at this point, because I'm just giving you a description of what this entity, how it presented itself at this particular time, and it was Russian. And then I hear the words, caveat emptor. I know y'all about to, I know. Usually the words caveat emptor has to do with a warning or a SOS to the buyer. In fact, in Latin, it means to let the buyer beware. So it wasn't until just this morning as I was contemplating, well, today bring it or wait until Sunday, I said, let me look up caveat emptor. And somewhere along the line, I came across the words caveat lector, which means let the reader beware, and also caveat auditor, let the listener beware. So I was like, oh, so it wasn't too far out of the box after all. Everybody, I'm only sharing with what I got. At this point, let me replay it quickly. Seemed to be a form of celebration. This entity and or man is bowing in prayer. The 7 points. Those that are Muslim or follow or know anything about the Islam, they know what I mean when I keep saying 7 points. The interviewer was there in solidarity with this entity because of whatever took place, unbeknownst to us at this point, based on me sharing with you. He bowed with him, but he was taken back when this entity said what he said. The entity took my hand, put me in the air, in a jiu-jitsu type movement. I'm going to tell you more of that momentarily. In addition, the interviewer is now gone, but now this entity is on my left hand, and I see him flaying his arms, like stretching himself like he had been folded for a long period of time or compressed. In addition, it was like the dream focused in like a camera so I could see his face. And it was that of an egotistical, self-serving, a sense of accomplishment look on his face. And here we are now. I wrote the words after caveat emptor, but I'll use these words since you're the listener, caveat auditor, and since I'm the reader, caveat lector. I wrote the words who, what, why, where, when, ... Is it the past? Hyphen. Is it the present? Hyphen. Or is it a future eventuality? And that's what I wrote. Sidebar or shift. Next I hear the words psychological warfare. If you remember, as I was reading my prologue, the third paragraph, I wrote these words. Our present reality portrays symptoms that manifest this surrealistic portrait of the world that the agents of the antagonist daily seek. Even as the faintest sounds of looming judgment and resolve are approaching. Methods, both of the spiritual kind, warfare, as well as of the psychological kind, warfare, are the vehicles used towards a despotic end. Again, a despotic end means dominance, unfairness, and cruelty. So here we are at that sidebar talking about psychological warfare. Keep everything in mind about the entity to this point. Psychological warfare, used to denote any action which is practiced mainly by psychological methods with the aim of evoking a planned psychological action in other people. I'm turning the page. Let me see what I got on the sidebar over here. I refuse to debate this. Let me see. I refuse to debate this. Oh. Sidebar. Hang on to psychological warfare. Hang on to that. On the prior page, I wrote the words, I refuse to debate existence or non-existence, reality or non-reality. And this is my absolute resolve. When it comes to an entity, when it comes to whatever this unique thing was, I sang the song at the opening, life is more than this, so much more than that, much, much more than this, so much more than that. There's so many things going on in the unseen realm. What those things are, who those things are, why those things are, I'm not going to debate it. I just know that life is more than what we see with the naked eye. I'm not going to debate with anyone what it is, who it is. There's more than what we see with the naked eye. Did I lose anybody? Anything I wrote else? Let me see. Latin phrase? No, that's it. Psychological warfare. So I'm moving on. The camera's still flashing red, so I have access. Let me see. In regards to that psychological warfare, this is what came to mind when I read that kind of general understanding of what psychological warfare is, and the methods that are being used. The way I saw it is this. The first thing I saw is acupuncture. Anytime the needles are placed, the user of the needles knows what the response should be, or no, that's probably not a good example, but They know the proper placement, because in my mind, I'm also thinking when you grab your own wrist, how your hands tend to close. What I'm getting at is this: those that deal in psychological workings, they know what to do. They know what to present. They know how to deceptively put in place to get the action that they're looking for. Let me get a little bit further. Maybe you'll see a little bit better what I'm trying to convey now. Talk about me later. I'm trying to convey it the best I can. And I don't want to rush too much because I don't know how long it's going to be. So if y'all there, y'all watching me, tell me, slow down. Okay. Okay, thank y'all. Thank y'all. Energetically, thank y'all. I wrote down a broad view scope, a perspective. Everything that I just talked about with the entity and the interviewer and us and him with that egotistical look on his face, look of accomplishment and all that. So you've got all this in mind at this point. This is what I wrote next. Broad scope view. How did we as a society at large get here? How did we get here? Because this event was on a world scope scale. This is what I felt in the dream. Everyone was watching. My assumption is they knew why this person was there and how he got there. The waves of compassion that I felt as I was watching the figure, in addition to what I saw in a negative sense on top of all of that. But I could feel the waves of compassion. Let me move on. Psychological warfare. Various techniques are used for those who are after a mark or have made them a target. These are the words I wrote down. I might be jumping a little bit, but I hope I don't lose you. The mark, if you will, or the target who is being attacked using psychological warfare, a target's value system is challenged. A target's belief system is challenged. Are y'all starting to see kind of what I was trying to explain before? Because in psychological, they know their point. I'm going to say another thing. Look, this is the year 2023. And this is just my thought, my take, that those up to no good by now, 2023, the year 2023, with the way science has evolved, with the way psychological research has evolved, the research of man in general has evolved. By now, again, the pieces of the puzzle scattered around this world's jurisdictions and counties and countries and municipalities being called together. The powers that be, the authorities in place, know exactly what to do, what to present in order to accomplish their goals. Value systems are challenged. Belief systems are challenged. Our emotions and motives are challenged. Reasonings and behavior are challenged. All challenged to accomplish, I wrote the words, release. How did we get here? How did we get here gawking at this entity doing his 7 points and having the interviewer to have a momentary setback in the middle of all of that because of what was now coming out of this entity? How did we get here? Going down. In addition, not only belief systems, emotions, motives, reasonings, and behavior challenge, but I have an arrow extending down to the bottom of the page, so I'm trying not to read everything. It was aided and or incentivized through governments, through organizations, through groups, through individuals who may be co-conspirators. Also, additionally, I wrote, this is psychological warfare, y'all. Technology, media, mass communications. I wrote the word radio, but I'm adding satellite radio, the internet, social media sites, all used to get us to that place where we're now gawking at this entity who isn't all that probably we thought he was, but he gained access. Somebody was doing research. Move a little bit further. In my research, I also came across these words. Disinformation was used. Misinformation was used. All done by agents posted around the world. The antagonist of our souls isn't doing the work by himself. Let me move on a little bit further. I hope y'all still with me. Let me take a drink of water. The subject is you. If the video was on, I would point to that man doing the 7 points. Let me move on a little bit further. Methods used to whitewash, camouflage, conceal this provocateur's happenings. And then I wrote, a future eventuality? Question mark. Bolo, all points bulletin. Be on the lookout. Then I have the words, oracles, be on the lookout. Seers, be on the lookout. Wise ones, be on the lookout. Old souls, be on the lookout. Spiritual teachers, be on the lookout. Shapeshifters, be on the lookout. Heart guardians, be on the lookout. Warriors, be on the lookout. Star ancestors, be on the lookout. Light workers, be on the lookout. Generals of light. All dedicated to healing, to the healing and the growth of the world. These things are happening, y'all. Moving on a little bit further. I wrote, the compassion which was used to gain the interest and intrigue of society at large and the world was now being used against it. That was tough for me, y'all. It took me a couple of days to muse over that. Our compassion. Think about that. Does that make anybody's hair stand on end? The very thing, as a protagonist of change, one of the very things you carry is compassion. Yes, there's empathy. Yes, there's sympathy. But these are one of the major points of what you carry as a worker of light. Compassion. And yet, at this point, with this entity beginning to do what he's doing, was used as access. Compassion. I would imagine the world at large, they were probably, I just had a flash. They were probably some of the ones out with their picket signs, free so-and-so, free. Taking off a day of work, telling their boss, no, we're going to do, no. And yet, at this point, it appears to be an ever-evolving Greek tragedy. Because it was the compassion that allowed him in. But don't fool yourself, y'all. Don't say something, no, if that's the case. No, I ain't finished yet. Because like I said, I had to work with it a little bit. But then this word came to mind. Y'all know what the word is? Because I've seen it talked about in movies and shows and all of that. But I never looked at it like I'm looking at it now. The word, y'all, is indifference. Indifference. Did I get anybody? Is somebody there? We are people who carry compassion. I just talked about psychological warfare. The methods used, our belief systems challenged, our emotions and motives and reasonings, our value systems all challenged for this entity to now be gawked at. The waves of compassion that I felt even watching it within the dream. But indifference is a monster. I have an arrow to turn my page over. Let me see what I wrote down. Here's the words I wrote. And no harm, no foul, in case someone lives in Hiroshima. The Hiroshima access given. I got the Hiroshima proportions that allowed access to be given. What do I mean by indifference? We as a society, oh God, help me to word my words correctly without being specific because of YouTube and because of society at large. Thank you. And there's a reader I listen to, please allow me to see what I need to see. Something along those lines, she says. And I'm asking for that now. The next words are these. We as a society at large, the target of the antagonist and his agents, have become fatigued. Fatigued with the wormholes of information. For example, media's interpretation of things, their views, their opinions. Again, caveat auditor, the listener, caveat lector, the reader. We've grown fatigue of public debates. We've grown fatigued because justice is seemingly delayed. Am I losing anybody? Y'all still with me? But I wrote in standard penmanship, delay does not mean denial. We've grown fatigue of whitewashing. We've grown fatigue of sweeping things under the rug. We've grown fatigue of the one percenters and the elite who seem to keep winning again and again. We've grown fatigue of prejudgments of situations. Therein lies the indifference. The compassion is still there. Some of the gawkers now looking at this man and watching the interviewer in solidarity doing his 7 points along with this entity or this man who appeared to be Russian in nature, being gawked at because we got tired of hearing about it on the news. We missed the details. We didn't pay attention to what was going on in the backroom dealings. Yet you're compassionate. You're compassionate. But we as a society, if we're not careful, have become indifferent. And now here we are. Anybody with me, or did I lose y'all? Here we are in the face of indifference, looking at something on the premise of Hiroshima proportions. I'm trying not to say the words I want to say. But epic. But it slipped right on in. Battle fatigue. Aided and or incentivized by governments or organizations, groups, individuals who are co-conspirators, or because of technology and media, mass communication, satellite radio, internet, social media sites, the hot boxers, I'm telling y'all that's a word, hot boxing, and their conspiracy theories. And we as a society, if we're not careful, we just say enough. We begin to cover up our ears. We begin to cover up our eyes. We begin to stop our mouths. I'm talking about the protagonists of change, even us. We're saying enough. And if you're not careful, you begin to declare a thing. You say, it ain't going to change anyway. Let me look at my sign. Let me look at the TV. Let me look at the world globe. You better be careful what you're speaking. Moving on. I ended by saying, figure, Russian in stature. Oh, I had already turned the page. So, Greek tragedy indeed. Indifference. Look it up. Indifference. So, because of the world at large or society's indifference, remember, the antagonists of our souls have pieces of his chaotic portrait of the whole human condition as he would see it. He's got pieces of his design scattered about the world. Continents, in countries, in the nations, in jurisdictions, in municipalities. And during this time, he's calling those pieces together. And he's using whatever means that he can to draw. The two things I mentioned in my prologue, spiritual, of the spiritual kind, and of the psychological kind. And he doesn't do the work himself, but he's got agents. He's got co-conspirators to do his bidding. A part of his bidding is presenting disinformation. A part of his bidding for chaos is misinformation. A part of his bidding for chaos is to assign co-conspirators. And because of our indifference, oh God, moving on. I wrote these words. I'm just reading the cards, y'all. Just reading the cards. I wrote next, Trojan horse. Trojan horse and the time prior to release and or containment was used. Was used. So as a Trojan horse, this entity is now on the scene. Because of our indifference. That doesn't mean you're not compassionate anymore. That you don't hold sympathy anymore. That you don't empathize anymore. But you allowed the pressures of life to bring you to a place of indifference and blinders being placed across your eyes and stoppers in your ears. Some of us withheld admonitions, covered our mouths. And he snuck right on in, just like a Trojan horse. Look it up. The Trojan horse. The Trojan horse. And then I have these words as a sidebar. First I wrote, he learned his mark well. Society at large. Whether it's by the spiritual kind or the psychological kind. He knew. And now he's on the scene. Trojan horse access? I don't know. Or was it our indifference? O foolish Galatians, saith the word of God in Galatians, the 3rd chapter, who hath bewitched you that you should not believe the truth? I believe before negativity like this comes on the scene, warnings are given. That's what I mean. We've grown indifferent. Now we're not saying those words of encouragement to someone. The very one you withheld encouragement to is probably the one going into the next school, going into the next church. I'll explain that later. Warnings will be given by the Most High. As I took this figure to be so Russian in nature, in stature, and build, for our sakes and the world's sakes, let us adopt a known proverb of the Russians. And that word is to trust but verify. To trust but verify. Going forward. Going forward. Now earlier, because I don't know if I'm going to talk about it later in this, when I said this figure was stretching his arms out, and the word that came to mind was jinn and genie. If you look it up, you'll find out that the jinn, J-I-N-N, is no stranger to those of the Islam faith. If I be not mistaken, somewhere in the Quran, it even speaks of it. The only reason why I relay that is how the dream was presented. It happened to be possibly someone of Islam nature who was doing the 7 points, the prayer. So I'm not saying that was the correlation, but I appreciated the fact that it wasn't so far off based on the word that came to me in the middle of the dream. Moving on. Trust but verify. That is a Russian proverb. The timelines and seasons we currently enjoy convey many opportunities for compassion as a gateway to access. From this and for this, we must guard. No matter what appears on the onset, just another reason discernment and intuition must be paramount. Turning the page. In addition, not only paramount, but your intuition and discernment must be acknowledged. Don't shrug at it. Don't become indifferent. These are trigger watches. And then bear with me in this folly. Don't talk about me. I'm going to say it with a big space in between. Remember 01 hyphen 06 hyphen 2023. I'm doing that for a reason. Sidebar. I once had an overseer who used to quote this quite often. He used to say, watch and pray. And the reason why I'm laughing right now is because he also said, even if it means that while you're praying and watching, especially the praying part, you keep one eye open. That's why the chuckle. Keep one eye open. Another thing I wrote down that he used to say is this. He used to say that he enrolled in newborn college. Some of y'all out there know what I'm talking about. I'm going to say it slow. He enrolled in newborn college. Prayer, 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 prayer. He enlisted in prayer university. Woo! Again, for me, I consider ancestor. For me, if their reach was in love, if their reach was in light, if their reach was to follow after righteousness, if their reach was to follow the path of righteousness, if their reach was along these lines, I consider them my ancestors, whether of blood or love. Ancestors. Moving on. Also remember, there was a time. There were several unwarranted attacks upon places of worship. Y'all remember that? Remember that. Throughout the country, without any meaningful genesis as to why. Again, watching and praying, even if that means one eye open. Because I can remember time myself get so caught up in praying, the eyes closed shut. Sometimes in the organization I was a part of, sometimes how can I say this without making it sound negative? The others hadn't arrived yet. I opened the doors and I looked around and nobody else had arrived. Is that positive enough? So those will be the times that maybe I keep one eye open. You know, it's okay to love God, believe God, trust God, but don't be foolish with it. All right, let me move on a little bit further. Unwarranted attacks on places of worship throughout the country without any meaningful genesis as to why. So again, I wrote watch, pray, discern. Intuition is essential. And again, the Russian proverb, trust, but verify. For there shall arise false prophets, there shall arise false Christs, and shall show great signs and wonders, insomuch that if it were possible, they shall deceive the very elect. What do I mean by the elect? Again, protagonists of change, but the called, the chosen, the remnant, the servicers of light. And for reference, I have Matthew 24 and 24. Continue. And no marvel, for Satan, or the antagonist, himself is transformed into an angel of light, who was once himself a light bringer. So it's either the antagonist of our souls, or his agents, or his messengers. Therefore, it is no great thing if his ministers also be transformed into ministers of righteousness. I wrote the word above that, fugazi or fugazi, from some of the mob movies I watched. Fugazi, a person or thing that is fake or fraud. So ministers of righteousness, whose end shall be according to their works. Their end. I spoke about in the prologue the looming. I put the, what's the word I used before looming? The faintest sound of looming judgment and resolve. But it's coming, y'all. It's approaching. For reference of the last thing I just read, that was taken from 2 Corinthians, the Bible I was talking about. As I said in the prior video, the more I become acquainted with other offerings, I will cite. I have no problem with citing. I'm for truth. Moving on. Fun fact, shape-shifting indeed. The first words I wrote. The next one is, this is the fun fact. Isn't there a crusade, political in nature, soon to occur in North America? I digress. Moving on. Here we go. That's it, y'all. That's it for that. Moving on. A shift came while I was writing, and I'm going to read it as I was presented it. Hear me out. I wrote open letter. Now to those who have opened their hearts energetically, having allowed me to tiptoe at times or walk treading lightly, but respectfully, through these here parts. It has been appreciated and energetically heartfelt, notable in fact. As I observed and absorbed words and actions of the plethora of your various giftings, you've granted energetic access that I might convey, share, and communicate divinely inspired thoughts, expressions, and opinions in light and in love. And in the words of Tina Turner, you're simply the best. Moving on. My earnest desire is to be found a vessel unto honor, meet for the master's use, serving at his pleasure. Oftentimes I say to the Most High, hold me fast, hold me sure, hold me soundly, and forever never let me go. Moving on. That I might appoint unto them that mourn in Zion, to give unto them beauty for ashes, the oil of joy for mourning, the garment of praise for the spirit of heaviness, that they might be called trees of righteousness, the planting of the Lord, that he might be glorified. Praise for the spirit of heaviness, that they might be called trees of righteousness. Karma, dharma, moksha, indeed. Moving on. The planting of the Lord, that he might be glorified. He, source. He, the divine. He, Ra. He, Allah. He, the great spirit. He, the most high God. He, the great mystery, and so on and so forth. God Almighty. I can hear one reader saying, Lordo. Ra. Woo. Finally, and to the rest. That was my open letter to those that were energetically receptive. And to the rest, but to the rest, I leave the words of Smokey Norfolk. His song was, I Understand. Let me explain. During those times, y'all help me to remember to turn the page back because I want to go to the words of the song. During those times when it was apparent that the energy wasn't also welcoming, I'll say it that way. I said in a prior video that I didn't run to the recruiter's office to enlist for what I'm doing now. No, I didn't do that. I didn't do that. I want to say it was the Heavenly Selective Service. And I had to register or face consequence. And indifference had no place here. So there would come times, like you, I'm sure, you would have to encourage yourself. And this is what I'm gaining by Smokey Norfolk. I'm giving y'all as it came to me. I didn't sit there and say, what song was it? No! As I was writing, this song came to mind, I Understand. Listen to some of the words Smokey Norfolk said. Sometimes I feel like giving up. It seems like my best just ain't good enough. Lord, if you hear me, I'm calling you. Do you see? Do you care at all about what I'm going through? And then he said, one more day, one more night, one more step. I'm preparing you for myself. When you can't hear my voice, please trust my plan. I am the Lord. I see, and yes, I understand. A little bit more, I like this. Sometimes I feel like I'm all alone, just like a stranger so far from home. I feel like I've done all I can do. Please, Lord, give me strength. I'm just trying to make it through. That's when he told me, one more day, one more step. I'm preparing you for myself. When you can't hear my voice, please trust my plan. I am the Lord. I see you, and yes, I understand. All right. Hallelujah. Thank you, Lord. Me, I'm a little bit country and a whole lot of rock and roll. A bit conservative, but wild and free, but proportionately. I imagine how Jesus could have presented during his time here on earth, being the Son of God, and how the world presents itself, often self-serving, cruel, segregated, discriminate, love values, and quick to judge in the worst light. I'm moving to the back page of the next. Jesus, again, walking among society's rejected, society's the forlorn, the different, seemingly unlovable, the outliers, if you'll allow me to use that word, or I didn't like this word, I wrote the word yuck, outcasts. And yet there Jesus was, interconnected and interacting with them. This also came to mind, and I did look it up, but I want to mention it. Because of what a person did, they're marked. And we treat them like I'm doing this napkin now. Like this. We may or may not speak to them. We see them, we walk on the other side of the street. I'm not saying be foolish if there's known danger. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about generally because of all encasing the types of people that we're going to find ourselves interacting with. And here Jesus is. He's interacting with them. He's not shunning them away. I want to believe because he knows he has something on the inside to offer. How about that? One of the things that came to mind is the scarlet letter. The scarlet letter. Anybody heard of that story? It's actually the scarlet letter, but I've got the scarlet lettered, because that's what came to mind first before I looked it up and found that there's a book called The Scarlet Letter. But that A being tagged, stay away from them. I wrote the words, a big, bold, blood red letter A. Because based on the story, if you look it up, you'll find it had to do with, I believe a woman, who had a child out of wedlock. So had committed adultery, no doubt. So they marked her with that letter A. An outcast, an outlier. No, stay over there. I remember, and my family can correct me, and this is probably why I don't know my real grandfather. I don't know any of that because it was just my dad, only child, and if I be not mistaken, it was out of wedlock, and I'm sure during that period of time it was quite frowned upon. You know what I mean? So I'm sure my grandmother had to face some things during that period of time because of the time. Are y'all with me? So there are people walking around us today that have been tagged because they took the air out of somebody. Y'all with me? Read between the lines. They did some nefarious things, some dark things, some low down things. But yet the Lord's arms are open wide. Y'all can correct me in the comments, but this is my thought. These are my opinions. I believe as long as we have the ability to take the next breath, there's time for change. The Scarlet Letter. It was written by Nathaniel Hawthorne in 1850. When I saw some of the offerings of what was contained in that storyline, it felt like interesting reading. So I'm going to say, there you go. Those book readers out there, this might be an interesting reading. The Scarlet Letter. And again, that is written by Nathaniel Hawthorne. And you might find some nuggets in there that you can use. And you'll find by the story's end that bold, my words, a red A becomes something altogether different by the end of that story. Moving on. My prayers, I got a little something for everybody. Here we go. Moving on. A little bit country, a whole lot of rock and roll. I was just me describing myself. The Lord could have at any time walking around those people that were cruel, those people that were had discriminate love values, that were quick to judge in the worst light. I wrote next, for the obstinate. The Lord could have been instant judgment, instant justice, and instant karma. But the scriptures declare, a bruised reed shall he not break, and a smoking flax shall he not quench, till he send forth judgment unto victory. And I'm telling you today, each day brings us closer to that day of resolve. But indifference is a detriment. Turning the page. He could have been all of that. Justice, judgment, karma. And yet he, the Lord, as a sheep before her shearers is dumb. The Lord said not a mumbling word. But just know this. This is from me to you. But just know this. Whatever our response is. Remember, I pretty much my open letter is giving praise to those that allowed me the walking room around parts that I wasn't familiar with. You didn't shut me down, and I appreciate that. I know the First Amendment and all. I got that. I understand that. But still, it's different. It's different. Anybody understand without me going any further than that? But it's different. So I'm conveying my appreciation for that. But then you have those that are just the opposite. Here, let me try to stay on point here. Jesus could have been karma, he could have been judgment, he could have been justice, but he didn't. But my words to you is this. Even though we're not saying anything, however you receive the world in general, it doesn't matter what walk they come from, know this. Records are being kept. I'm going to say it again. Records are being kept. And I'm not talking about here in the 3D. Records are being kept for everything that you say, everything that you do. Even the intent, the thoughts and intents of your heart are being recorded. That's why every now and then, you go along and you say, oops. You're going to be judged correctly for that oops. Because this is the intent you're being judged on. It's different if you're saying oops, but on the inside say, yeah, I got him. Y'all with me? Did I lose anybody? All right. There you go. So, to all workers in light and love, stay on task to accomplish the mission and or assignment laid to your hands and to your charge. In the words of Matthew 10:16, behold, I send you forth as sheep in the midst of wolves. Be ye therefore wise as serpents and harmless as doves. Moving on. Also, presently, thousands of years later, the power and authority of the Lord's name, I'm going somewhere with this, bear with me, continues to imbue. And get this, He doesn't have to declare. You know how some people say, I'm the boss, I'm this, I'm that. He doesn't even have to declare his own authority, power, dominion, might, rule, government, reign. It says, because the great cloud of witnesses daily declare and walk in his name. Yep, his name. Love and light, Ashe. Moving on. Praise break. When I thought about this next line I'm about to say, this song came to mind. Growing up, how I grew up, and I'm about to tell you in a few seconds. But the song is, before I take it back, I'll add more to it. Why? Because God has really been good to me. Now, this is what I wanted to say. That was the title of the song of a praise break. I'm not going to the words, but that's what I heard as I was writing these words next. A number of you, and I'm talking about my folks that are close, intimate, know me. A number of you may have thought I left the reservation. I'm going to pause right there. I'm going to let you think about it. Now be careful. Remember, I just said notes are being taken, records are being kept. You know what you said. You know what thought you entertained. A number of you may have thought I left the reservation, and you know what I mean when I say that. Background: Pentecostal, Methodist, Christian, non-denomination, and more. And then I wrote the words, but oh no. Again, before I take it back, give me something to cite from that's truth that rings with my inner man, and you'll hear me citing it. Oh, yes, you will. Oh, no. But oh, no. With whom I have to do has continually shown himself strong and mighty. To me. And then I wrote the words, time and time and time again. So before I take it back, those of you who think I left the reservation, before I take it back, all I'm doing is adding more to it. Some of it was shunned because they said, no, y'all pagans, y'all can't do that, y'all can't have that. Let me leave that alone. Leave it alone. Not only that he's shown himself strong and mighty to me, I've got many opposers and oppressors now know, because they have become duly aware. And you know that because of what you've been doing. Remember, notes are being taken. That brings me back to Ivan or Ivan. Remember I said I'm coming back to it? Remember when he held out his hand to shake my hand? Because this is the point in the dream where I realized, like, oh, I'm seeing. That's me saying that now. So he takes my hand, and it turns into a jujitsu move. He pulls me in and lifts me up in a form of a takedown submission move. And while I'm up in the air, I began to acknowledge him in whom I have to do, who has proven himself time and time and time again. So as I'm acknowledging him with whom I have to do, while this entity has me in the air, I feel myself coming down like a feather against gravity, floating back. This is the way I'm seeing myself in the dream, floating back down, and I wake up out of the dream. Yeah, just like that. The night is far spent. The day is at hand. Let us, therefore, cast off the works of darkness and put on the armor of light. Let us cast off indifference. Watch, pray, intuition, discernment, acknowledged. Pay attention to the nudges, the intuitive nudges, the Russian proverb, trust but verify. With regard to the enemy, our shadow selves, or the antagonists of the brethren of light, if these, them, or they should enter in like a flood, then the Lord shall raise a standard against them, resulting in a balanced, divinely meted out judgment and justice to all, you, me, us, we, because the Most High declares this. Ashe. Coming down to the close. Most times I open up the video with a song, and I'm holding back because I really want to get into it. I felt myself almost on the note. I don't like the sound of that because I want to come across myself. But I felt myself going into second gear by the time I finished up the last song. If you go back and listen to it, you'll probably see what I felt right toward the end, because it felt like I'm there. I wanted to there. Because I'm on assignment. And I want his presence, his anointing there, not coming. So just like some of you offer your Palo Santo, you offer your sage. Me, I offer song. For me, the song is a sweet melody, is to be a sweet smelling savor to the Most High, because it's from me. It flows from me. It's what I'm seeing at the time. It's what I'm feeling at the time. It's what's going on the inside sorry about the mic, y'all, at the time. So that's what I'm offering up before I open up. All right? That's what it's all about. Now, nearing the close, here we go. To the Most High, those are my offerings, the sweet smelling savor. But from the Most High are these: words, lyrics, songs, whispers, and so much more. What are they to me? And what are they to us, his elect? Melodies from heaven. Not going to give you all the words, because pretty much Kirk Franklin is saying, melodies from heaven, rain down on me, melodies from heaven, rain down on me. Take me in your arms, hold me close, and rain down on me. Why, Charles? Because I want to have something to give y'all. This isn't a game to me. And then after having that dreamscape that I had of that entity, and then knowing how he got in, oh God, oh God. I'm going to the last page. I felt like, because I wrote these words, FYI, I'll say to me, y'all just happen to be hearing me, a niche of preparation, Hype Central. Hype Central appears to be morphing into a niche of preparation for the prepared, by the prepared, to the preparation of many. Ashe? Didn't know. Selective service. I got the call. I had to sign on the dotted line. I didn't enlist. Selective service. Drafted. Moving on. Here we go. I was sitting, this is what I'm closing with. I was sitting in the tub. By now, it's been, 8 or 9 days since I made the announcement of this message, but I was ruminating and thinking on a number of things. One of the things I thought about is who we are in society and where we are in society. I'm going to convey it to you this way. I thought about a line from a movie called Magnum Force from 1973, and that line that Clint Eastwood declared was this. It says, man has got to know his limitations. We, people of light, who we are, we've got to know where we stand, who we represent, and we've got to hold fast to that thing. Because in this day and times, there's a lot going on behind the scenes. If you're not careful, someone will get the drop on you. And we don't want that to happen. No. A man has got to know his limitations. You've got to know your fitment. You've got to know your fitness level. You've got to know it, not based on what somebody else says. You have to know. So I wrote down your bubble limits. Until you are awakened to this fact, we all as specimens have been placed in a tank, for example. That's the other thing that came to mind. I'm jumping around. There was a breach in that. But this is the way I convey it. The other thing I thought about while I was in the tub was, it doesn't matter your walk, where you came from, what faith, and all of that. Envision with me or imagine with me that all of us, anybody know what a fish tank is? You know, some people got varieties of fish, but it's all contained in a single place in that fish tank. Doesn't matter what it is. It could be the scavenger, it could be the goldfish, it could be whatever. Those that are properly matched can be in that same fish bowl. But I'm saying, for an example, all of us, doesn't matter the walk, we're all contained in one place. Because this is what I saw. I wrote various specimens of we, us, ours, etc., all being gawked at, spectacles to the world. And it says, and daily by the authority of the heavenlies. We are one place, no matter the discipline or non-discipline, have been centralized in one place, and we're being observed. What do I have on the side? Blah, blah, blah. In closing here, bathing, blah, blah, blah. Begin to muse, blah, blah. Okay. So that's one of the things. We can declare where we stand as far as our faith. That's fine. But we're still all spectacles to the world. Doesn't matter the walk. Because you're being watched. You're being evaluated. You're being monitored. You're being watched to see if your words line up with the walk and the talk. Jesus walked his talk, talked his walk. And yet, there were those that rejected him. But he didn't get mad. But I also told you, but notes are being taken. Because the day of resolve is coming. And then finally, I want to end with this. This is the other thought I had in the tub. I know I'm jumping around a little bit, but stay with me. One more thing. And then I got words to a song. Since I'm new to these parts, as I was sitting in the tub, I was thinking about the different cycles. You got the moon cycles. You've got what do they call retrograde. You've got, I don't know what, cuffing season. You've got, different things like that happen in life. I started thinking about the seasons, and I said, well, God, I'm exaggerating because I commune internally. Every now and then I might say something out loud, especially if there's a real challenge. I might say it out loud, but I'm communing on the inside to the Most High. So one of the things I was conveying is like, how do I handle the cycles when they come, especially the things I'm not familiar with. And I was just, again, just talking. And then I heard these words. I heard winter, spring, summer, and fall. Some of y'all already there. That's what I heard. Before I could get the words out of my mouth good. And then I looked it up. And the name of the song is You've Got a Friend. And the words go like this. Because I wish I wrote the date down when I wrote it down. First of all, I want to clarify something. The friend. The friend is source, the Most High, God, Ra, the divine, Allah, the Lord God. and so on and so forth. So keep that in mind as I give you the words to the song. But it says, when you're down and troubled and you need some loving care and nothing is going right, close your eyes and think of me, and soon I will be there to brighten up even your darkest night. You just call out my name, and you know wherever I am, I'll come running to see you again. Winter, spring, summer, or fall. Seasons, y'all. Seasons. All you have to do is call. This, I'm telling y'all, how somebody say that, the comedians or somebody, I can't make it up. I'm just telling y'all. Winter, spring, summer, or fall, all you have to do is call, and I'll be there. You've got a friend. If the sky above you grows dark and full of clouds, and that old north wind begins to blow, keep your head together and call my name out loud. Soon you'll hear me knocking at your door. Seemed like I skipped something. If the sky above you grows dark and full of clouds, and that old north wind begins to blow, keep your head together and call my name out loud. Soon you'll hear me knocking at your door. You just call out my name, and you know wherever I am, I'll come running, to see you again. Winter, spring, summer, or fall, all you have to do is call, and I'll be there. Yes, I will. Now, ain't it good to know that you've got a friend when people can be so cold? They'll hurt you, yes, and desert you, and take your soul if you let them. Oh, but don't you let them. Yes, just call out my name, and you know wherever I am, I'll come running, to see you again. Winter, spring, summer, or fall, all you have to do is call, and I'll be there. Yes, I will. You've got a friend. You've got a friend. That was sung and performed by, written and performed by Carole King. Carole King. She also wrote another song. Did I highlight what it was? Is it It's Too Late? It's Too Late. 1971. She also wrote the words to It's Too Late and performed it. But that was so beautiful. It couldn't have been answered so quickly or even better. It doesn't matter the season that we find ourselves in. You have a friend. So I'm ending it with that. The subject was you. I hope something contained in something I said is something you can use. I know that was a lot of somethings. But I do. The bolo is, don't be indifferent. The enemy is looking for a way in already. And indifference can be detrimental. Hiroshima detrimental. Thanks for stopping by. And be blessed. Thank you.